Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today's upload is one that I did not have planned out. I had something completely different planned for today, but because I was in an accident yesterday, everything got messed up. Before we get into today's upload, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you really want to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It's absolutely free. Click the like button. It doesn't hurt. And please leave a comment. It really does help, and it definitely matters. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? So, before we get into today's upload, I'd like to give some recognition to a very good friend of mine, Dark Waters, James. He is approaching 100,000 subscribers. If you don't know who he is, and I find that kind of hard to believe, but if you don't know who he is, go over and subscribe. He really needs 2,300 subs left to hit 100,000. And I think it would be amazing if he could hit it within this next week that we have coming up. Truly a pioneer in the Dogman field. He has a lot of ideas, information, just a great guy in general. And, it really mean a lot if you went over and subscribe to him if you're not already. So today's upload, excuse me. Yesterday I was in an automobile accident. I was rear-ended. I was completely stopped, and a guy drove into me going 30 miles an hour. Just slammed into me out of the blue. Thank God I didn't hit the car in front of me, and thank God that my daughter wasn't with me. But anyway, I spent the entire afternoon and evening up until about 11 o'clock in the hospital, and I was listening to, I don't listen to cryptid stuff. I don't want to. I have respect for a lot of narrators or researchers, whatever you want to call us. But I don't listen to other channels because I don't want to get an idea from listening to someone like, someone's channel and work off of it. And then have someone say, hey, you copied them. But I was listening to Forrest Gallant, and I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a brilliant guy. He searches the world over for supposedly extinct animals. He's South African, wicked smart guy. He has said three things that really struck me. He's a scientist, and scientists are not supposed to believe in cryptids. So on the Joe Rogan podcast one day, he talked about the chupacabra, and he talked about the difference between the South American or Central American chupacabra and the North American chupacabra. They're two different looking creatures. One's reptilian like, and the other is canine like. So he was talking about this breeding pair of thylacine, which is the Tasmanian tiger. It has this huge maw of a mouth, and it opens to like 180 degrees. It's just gigantic. Well, there was a breeding pair, and if you look up the thylacine, if you don't know what they are, you'll see a similarity between what the chupacabra in America looks like between that and the thylacine. He said that he believes possibly that this ship had crashed off the coast of North America, and this breeding pair swam to shore through geographic evolution, change, this and that. They started to slowly evolve or de-evolve into what a chupacabra looks like nowadays. This very kind of emaciated, sometimes manged looking creature with a gigantic maw that attacks farm animals. Well, the thylacine, when wild, hunted farm animals. It was, I believe that's part of the reason why they were killed off as farmers. So that really struck me as kind of odd, because by him saying that, almost really solidified, hey, there are cryptids. This is a scientist. The second, and I really want you guys to think about this, he believes quite possibly that dinosaur dragons lived. Now, through archaeology, we seldom find birds from back in the day, like Archaeopteryx and stuff like that. So we have all of these civilizations from all over the world combating these huge reptilian flying monsters, right? And people are like, well, if they existed, there would be bones, there would be proof, there would be fossils. Well, the reason why Forrest believes that they existed and they're not being found is because, like birds, they have hollow bones, which eventually dissolve. They cannot fossilize hollow bones. And I was like, wow, I'm listening to this in the hospital yesterday, and I'm sorry, I'm really out of breath. My lower back is killing me. I don't know what's going on. My neck, severe whiplash, and then I woke up, my kidneys are hurting. And yes, I got a call into my primary, who was also my specialist. So anyway, back to the goodies. So I'm laying there and I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, if that is possible, then why is it so far-fetched to believe that these dogmen exist? There are multi-cultures that talk about a dogman / werewolf. And when I say werewolf, I don't mean transformation. I just mean a canine-like creature. There's a video kicking around on YouTube. This guy, I think he's Indian, like the country Indian, not Native American. And he's got this really high-pitched voice. So you guys, I'm just saying, I'm not insulting him. I'm just saying this so you know who I'm talking about. I don't know his name, channel's name. But he tries to debunk these, ancient artifacts, and a lot of times he gets it wrong. But then a lot of times he really can't miss, and there's this statue of this huge canine eating a pig. Now, the thing is how that canine looks. It is very Dogman-esque. Very big muzzle, very hocked legs, just, and much bigger than the pig, just kind of stuffing it in its mouth. And that's like this old artifact from back in the day. So if a scientist can believe that quite possibly dragons, I keep wanting to say dinosaurs, dragons existed, then why is it so hard to believe that a dogman exists? We have far too many sightings, too many attacks, and when I say sightings too, I mean by not just like people like me or you guys. I mean like the quote unquote reputable, sheriffs and people of stature in the community. So it shouldn't be that hard to believe that these things existed or exist still. And then he said this one time, and I've only heard him say it once. Rogan asked him about Bigfoot. And he said, I'm not really sure, but with the Gigantopithecus existence, it may be possible for a 7 to 8 foot upright hominid to exist, even possibly now. I've heard many people on the West Coast just talk about how these things come out of lava tubes, which are caves. And maybe these kind of portals to these alternate dimensions are in those tunnels and caves. This is once again just theory, all of it, and I'm just kind of giving it to you guys to, kick around in your head and come up with different, better ideas, because that's the best part about this is I share something, you get a little bit from it, someone else shares something, you get a little bit more than that, and then pretty much you have something bigger, and then you share it with us, and then we get a little bit off of it. It's a never-ending circle of theory and ideas. So anyway, I'm going to throw in a couple of encounters right now. I'm sorry, once again, this was not what today's upload was supposed to be, and absolutely feel like crap, so here you go. One night I was doing security exercise, and outside of a restricted area that was wooded, sitting in an unarmored Humvee with 3 other fully armed men. Those 3 were himself, a major who was the machine gunner and surgeon, and 2 other army men. They were in the army, not army men. And we noticed a pair of eyes, red eyes, watching us from about 8 feet off the ground. Looking over them with our starlight devices, we could see an outline of something standing there. It was a massive bipedal creature with shaggy hair. Now, mind you, these guys were armed. They had 9mm, about 10 of them in this Humvee, he said. The machine gunner had an M60 with about 800 rounds. The other two, himself and another man, had M16s, and another one had a M16 with a grenade launcher. The second they noticed that, we all had this feeling that we should not be seeing this, and also that it was hostile. All of them got a huge sense of fear, and they ended up putting the Humvee in gear and racing back to alert the fire team at the bunker. And they stayed there for the rest of the night. Now, on Whiteman Air Force Base during this time, the B-25, I'm not really sure. B-52 bomber. Stealth bomber, yes. That was on the base. They had a lot of high security stuff. So these guys were not slouches in any manner, shape, or form. Strangely enough, there was a Indian burial ground just off of the premises, and the way he mapped out this Whiteman Air Force Base was very interesting, and a lot of woods, and just a very chilling encounter. Hopefully he can hear me talking about his encounter and maybe come on the show and rescue me from this just terrible telling of his story. Like I said, he gave me a brief email, and then we spoke for about an hour today. But like I said, great guy, and I'm praying, I really am praying, that he just says, screw it, I'm going on. Anyway, on to the next encounter. This encounter took place a little over a year ago. Me and two of my friends took my Jeep out for a ride around some trails and up on a few of the mountains. On our way back down, it was about 2 in the morning, and we had to pass a private family graveyard. I decided to try and mess with my friends by pulling off the gravel road and parking in the makeshift parking lot of the cemetery. While we were sitting there messing with each other, I decided to yell to really mess with them. Now, this is where it gets a little real and the adrenaline kicks in, because about 5 seconds after I yelled, all three of us heard something yell back from inside of the woods behind the cemetery. Now, none of us are little dudes, and we are certainly armed to the teeth. 2 handguns, a shotgun, and my AR-15. But we were all petrified. I turn the Jeep over, and we start hauling ass down this gravel road. I say hauling ass, but my Jeep was a pile of shit, so we were really only going 45. As we were about 2 miles from the exit of the trail, we heard something running beside the Jeep, keeping pace with us. We can hear it snapping branches, and it sounds like it's barely outside of the view of the Jeep. Right as we're about to get onto the main road is when it stops and we can't hear it anymore. Well, right there, I think he woke up a Dogman, or pissed off a Dogman, and it wanted to come and say hi. Let's get on to encounter 3. Today's 3rd subscriber encounter. Jeff, I apologize it's taken so long for me to get back to you about these encounters, but like you know and understand, a lot's been going on lately. Add that with a couple of deaths in the family, and finally here we are. Please feel free to edit where necessary. My name is John, and I live in Oregon. Sorry, but I'm one of those Oregonians who is a stickler about how it's pronounced. To start off with my mom's Dogman encounter. First of all, you should know my grandparents are divorced, so my mom chose to live with my grandfather in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My grandfather never cared for neighbors within the close proximity, so we always lived in the outskirts or in the fringes of town, if not straight in the middle of nowhere. It was one summer while my mom was living with him in Tulsa that her stepsister, Linda, from my grandmother's new marriage, came to stay with my mother and grandfather for the summer. Well, one night, as my mother and Linda were getting ready for bed, they both got a very uneasy feeling that they couldn't shake. I remember my mom saying that you could feel something very sinister, and just straight gave her the heebie-jeebies. Linda as well. They both decided to crawl into my mother's bed, and were still feeling utter despair and chilled to their core, asking each other what that feeling was about. Neither one of them could put a finger on it, but as my mom turned to Linda once more to comment more about it, she looked upon Linda's face, with her eyes locked on the window of my mother's room, at the foot of their bed, with no color in Linda's face and the most terrified look she had ever seen, and right at that moment Linda screamed a blood-curdling scream at the top of her lungs. My mom had turned her head to look out the window Linda was fixated on, and my mother had seen her absolute concentration, two glowing red eyes peering in at them through the window. My mother could make out a dog about and two rows of sharp teeth. She said one of the things she will never forget is that both top and bottom rows of teeth were completely sharp, no cuspids, bicuspids, and so on. This creature was also sneering at them, as well as emitting a low guttural growl, and what made my mom think that at first was a demon because she had seen what looked like two horns on the top of its head. But when it laid its horns back down, she came to realize they were ears and not horns. My grandfather came busting into the room with a 12-gauge full of slugs and exclaimed, "What is it? What is it? What the hell is it?" My mother and Linda told him what they saw, and my grandfather flew out of the house with his shotgun, not asking another question. However, by the time he got out of my mother's window, the beast had fled back into the nearby woods on my grandfather's property. My mom and Aunt Linda were traumatized, as you can imagine, and spent the rest of their summer at my grandfather's, sleeping on the living room couch. Next is not a Dogman encounter really, but in some ways, as you will hear, even more terrifying and disturbing. This happened to me. I was 7 years old, and it too was during a summer break. I went to Vista, California to visit my great-aunt, Charlotte. She had a restaurant connected to a guest house alongside a beautiful river that connected to the Sequoia National Park. We all stayed in the guest house of the restaurant, and on the porch of this house were a few appliances to the restaurant and a huge, never before seen anything like it, timber wolf chained to the railing of this porch. The wolf and I got along just fine every day, but one day I made the horrible, life-changing mistake. I was on the porch next to the wolf, and it seemed to be either chewing on a bone or its leg or some other body part. I bent down to stroke the wolf along its back, and the next thing I knew, I'm coming in, I was knocked unconscious for a very brief moment, and when I opened my right eye for some reason, I couldn't open my left one. All I could see were flashes of bloody canines and splatters of blood and flesh being ripped from my face. When I came to the realization I was essentially having my face being eaten off by a timber wolf, I fought with everything I had, but to no avail, as my little 7-year-old body was no match for the strength and tenacity of this creature. Fortunately, I had already gone into shock, so I believe it or not, at no time did I feel any pain whatsoever from my face being mauled. The creature had me pinned up against 2 CO2 tanks that belonged to the restaurant, and my sperm donor, Biodad, heard the commotion and came outside along with my Uncle Randy and beat the wolf off of me. They had picked me up and brought me inside of the house, where I had taken a look at my mother, and the expression of horror on her face, along with the plates she had dropped to the floor, told me I was in bad shape. Next to my mother was a hutch, and on the back was a tiled mirror where I got a good look at myself, and I couldn't believe that that was me I was looking at. It was so surreal, like I was in a never-ending nightmare or horror movie, as one of the werewolf victims. But this was no special effects job I was looking at. It was my grotesque, disfigured, ripped-apart face. I couldn't even recognize myself. My biodad rushed me to the hospital, where I had my face sewn back together, and my left eye was swollen shut for about a month. In that whole time, never knowing if it really got my eye as well. Honestly, it seemed the least of my worries at the time, so I never asked. For the next school, I was horribly taunted, picked on, and treated like a freak because of my disfigurement. And to add to insult to injury, it happened to be the same year Al Pacino's Scarface had come out to theaters. You can guess what name I had adopted that year, obviously. Finally, the following year, I was able to get reconstructive plastic surgery upon my face, and after several months of rubbing cocoa butter on my scars, you couldn't hardly tell that I was ever mauled. But honestly, Jeff, at this time, what makes this particular mauling by this particular animal even more disturbing is that this timber wolf looks exactly like what has been described so many times by people who have encountered Dogman have described. To a T, minus walking bipedally, and having hands, of course. But I can't help for a lot of these descriptions stir around my PTSD when they described what they attacked me so many years ago. Thank you for your time and letting me send you my encounters. Your beloved subscriber and fan, John. So I hope everyone enjoyed today's upload. I apologize for the length of it being shorter than normal. I'm going to rest today and figure some stuff out. I know that I've got a up-and-coming interview with my good friend James / Dark Waters, and I've got to deal with the insurance company today and figure out what to do about my vehicle and this and that and the medical bills. I don't know. I guess New York State is a no-fault state, which I have no idea. I've never been in a car accident like this where I was hurt. A couple fender benders here and there where, you get out and look, oh, it's all right. But, yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for all your support. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and may the Great Spirit watch out for us all and guide us down that path that we call life.